Hello and welcome to the Conscious Entrepreneurs Podcast, a series of inspiring interviews with spiritual leaders and entrepreneurs who have successfully turned their passion into their own business and who are dedicated to living their best possible life while making this world a better place through their work, offerings, and authentic presence. I'm your host, Anna Frolic. I am an intuitive guide and mentor for purpose-driven business owners who are ready to break free from their self-imposed limitations so they can confidently step into their true calling, make more money working less, and embrace the life their soul is craving. I'm so excited you're here with us, and I can't wait to introduce you to today's guest. For more information about this and past episodes, please visit www.annafrolic.com. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Conscious Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm so excited to be here today with Ciara Young. Ciara is a consciousness catalyst and spiritual guide for spiritual guides, and she loves to help highly conscious visionaries step into their full purpose and potential as wayshowers. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Ciara. I'm so excited you're here.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, Anna. I'm super excited just to get to talk to you. It's always magical. It's been lovely to connect with you over the last year or so.
Totally agree. Yeah, definitely feeling the magic. And I'm super excited about the topics that we're going to talk about today. I have quite a few questions for you. And as you know, I always like to let these conversations unfold naturally too. So I'm pretty sure we'll have a lot of magic to share with our audience today. And basically the first thing that I wanted to ask you is, could you share a little more with us about how you got started on your spiritual journey? Is this something that was kind of present for you for your entire life? Did this start in your childhood, or was it something that started for you later in your life?
Yeah, so it's something that's always been there. And I was always, since the earliest memory that I have, aware of myself as a spiritual being. And I had a really strange childhood. And through a series of events that happened, I ended up being totally isolated. You know, I was completely bullied by my classmates and so on. So I didn't actually have friends around me. We ended up then living in rural Ireland, which was very isolated to begin with and so on. And so I just found myself in a place from a really, really young age where I had nothing else to do except to explore this sense of spirituality that I had. So it's always been there, and I've just kind of followed the trail of, I guess, the sense of connection to something beyond the ordinary that's been there as long as I can remember.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. I know, you were born in Ireland and you still live there. So another question, I guess that's just coming to me spontaneously because I really love the elemental realms. Did you have like a special connection to the fairies in the elemental realms when you were little?
Absolutely, yes. And just to be clear, I only moved here when I was 6, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yes, absolutely, and still do. I work a lot with the fairies. They're so fun, and really, really close to them, and they involve themselves a lot in my work, specifically to do with inner child healing. They are just so supportive of that. I'm sure you know this yourself as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So definitely.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. I actually, when I do inner child healing with my clients, I often find that when I bring in those fairy energies or the unicorns and the elementals, it just makes everything so much lighter and so much easier. Sometimes it can get a bit heavy if we don't really remember to make it fun. So that's a really great reminder.
Absolutely. Brilliantly put.
And do you have conversations with the fairies?
I don't speak to them so much, but they show up and give me hints on things, and specifically they always let me know when I'm getting too heavy. If I'm taking the journey too seriously, you know, if I'm just making it too hard on myself. I don't communicate with them through talking, but through empathic. They'll give me impulses of information. So not conversations per se, but definitely, subtle communications just to keep me on track with having a little bit more of a lighthearted approach in how I go through my journey.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so I wanted to hear a little more as well about how you got the inspiration to start sharing your work with a larger audience. When did you feel that it was time for you to take this step and also to take your leap into entrepreneurship? Was there like a pivotal moment that opened up this path for you, or was it something that you had always kind of known and that just evolved naturally and gradually?
Yeah, so I think I actually kind of took a bit of an unusual path with this one as well. Like I mentioned a minute ago, I had a really odd upbringing, and I actually started blogging probably in, I think it was 2010, to try to heal myself. It was to try to reclaim my own voice. I had no intention of going into entrepreneurship. I had no intention of having a business. But through my writing, I somehow managed to attract an audience, and people just gradually began to ask me, do you do private work? Because I want to work with you and so on. And initially I totally resisted that, and then realized, okay, this is where I'm being prompted to go. So I always say I had an accidental business. I did not mean to get into this at all. But to my huge surprise, once I started to realize this is where I was supposed to be going, and I started to take it seriously, I realized how much I actually loved business and the idea of being able to do it consciously. So initially it was, I didn't mean to have a business. Then I ended up with a business. Then I started to take it seriously. And it was at that moment of realizing, okay, this is actually my calling, business. That was the pivotal turning point, if you will, that kind of set me in a whole different direction with this.
Yeah, I love how it happens so naturally for you. And I think this is often the best way to get started when you don't really have, a big plan for a business, because you can just really share yourself authentically and your ego doesn't get in the way as much. And I've seen it happen for a lot of people, for myself as well, actually, when I first got started on my spiritual awakening journey. And I had always kind of known that I had a calling in this direction, or well, not always, but for a while. And but I just really started blogging out of passion and joy, and then everything just unfolded naturally from there. So
that's
yeah.
amazing how you say that. Sorry, Anna, go ahead. I
No,
interrupted
it's
you there.
okay.
I was just going to add that, like, I've always found passion and joy is a magic generative power. Like, it makes your business work. So it's so cool that you said that.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely necessary, actually. And I've been in other places too where I didn't feel the passion. And it's actually something I've been working on this year and for part of last year as well. But something I often see, with entrepreneurs who get started out of a feeling of need or lack, or they just need to make it work for financial reasons or for whatever reason. It's not always that way, but for a lot of people, I see there a lot more blocks when they get started in this place. And when you can just get started in a place of joy and passion, it's a totally different story. Just really, it's like your purpose is calling you and guiding you at the same time, and you just get all the pieces of the puzzle and one step at a time, and you don't even really need to work for it or struggle to make it happen. It just kind of comes to you.
Yeah, I love how you put that. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. I love hearing your story. And what would you say have been some of your biggest challenges as a light worker or a way shower in the entrepreneurial world? Would you say there are like specific issues or problems that conscious people or conscious entrepreneurs tend to run into? And also, how did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah. So I think you've noticed something similar to what I'm about to say yourself, because I'm sure I've seen a blog post of yours on this at some point. But one of the biggest things that I notice that my clients come with all of the time is that once you start getting serious about, okay, I really want to make this business thing work, 99.9% of the information out there for mainstream business doesn't apply in the same way to light workers. And it's so easy to get tripped up on that. Like you were just saying it a moment ago, the way that works for us is leading with the passion and the joy, and as just one tiny example, and that magically somehow gets you the results. Whereas if you were to do it, in the do this way that works in the linear 3D world, it just does not work for a light worker, because we're not supposed to do it like that. And that can be really confusing for people, I think. And so the solution that I found to that is to just say, okay, I know in my heart that that stuff is not how this works for me. I also know if I'm supposed to be doing this, then there's an answer inside of me. How do I do this? Like asking myself, and the new way comes forth. And as soon as I kind of just trusted in tapping into that, that hurdle was overcome.
I love what you said about the answer being inside of you, because I think that's such an important part of our journey as way showers, because we are here to pave a new road, or just really create new things or new ways of doing things. And that's a really great reminder. And I could write a book about this, because
Sure.
I'm someone who kind of has a foot in both worlds, and then sometimes I get really stuck between the worlds, and I go back and forth between the worlds. It can be really confusing, but I always get back to this place where I just know that, all right, I got to do this differently.
Yeah.
The answer's inside of me. It's not outside of me. And I totally agree with you. That usually solves the problem, and just got to be open to the infinite possibilities and really use your magic.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love how you put that. And exactly as you said, we're here to actually create a new way. The way isn't there until we create it. And that's a really unique position for way showers to be in. And sometimes another thing that I notice is that there's a certain isolation or loneliness that can come with that. So connecting with others who are also in the same boat is really important, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's so important. And knowing that we're not alone on this journey. What would you say, like in terms of receiving support? I feel it's really important to be open to receiving support in business, but also, have someone who can guide you in a way that doesn't necessarily interfere with your own inner guidance. What's your experience been with this, and do you have any like tips or insights that you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I have, to be totally honest, I found it hard to find people who I can have that with, where you've, like you said, they don't dilute your inner guidance, but can also guide you at the same time. However, I have found a few people, and my thing that I would say on that is absolutely, you've got to trust yourself implicitly first, and only be willing to engage with those who trust you, even while leading you somewhere. And that just requires really being strong in knowing what's right for you.
Yeah, that's big. I love how you explain this, because I've definitely been there, like where I didn't trust my own inner guidance, or somebody reached out because they wanted to work with me, and then or they wanted me to be their client, and something inside of me was like, I'm not entirely sure, and then I went for it, and then it was not the best experience. But I've also found that when I really trust someone, and I know there's like trust from the beginning, then it really works. So yeah,
that's amazing.
Totally agree with you on this. All right, something really exciting that I wanted to talk to you about today as well is I saw a video on YouTube, I think a while ago, where you talked about a new healing modality that you got certified in. It's called Valvaspata. How do you pronounce it?
Valvaspata. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So could you share with us a little more about what exactly this healing modality is, and like what its benefits are, and why you're so passionate about it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this is actually one that I've been certified in for quite a few years. It wasn't a new one, but I'd love to tell you about it. It's really exciting. So it's a light and frequency healing modality. It's not an energy healing modality. And in an ancient light language of the Infinite Mother, it means healing of the heart. That's the meaning of Belvaspita. And it does a number of different things. Essentially, what it does is it restores the integrity of the fields around your body to the highest possible level of recognizing absolute unity with source. Essentially, it kind of like it's a big claim, And in a more basic way, what that does is heals your heart from the dream of separation. So I'm sure absolutely every light worker in existence feels on some level this feeling of like there's a distance between us and this place that we're looking for that we could call home, sort of thing. And a distance between us and the infinite or source or God or whatever energy that, whatever name somebody wants to give to that. This removes the feeling of separation completely, so that you actually feel the depth of how loved you are by infinite life, which opens your heart so completely that you're able to then create through the full power of the heart in this new cosmic reality that we're in now. And then on a more simple level, it also, as a result of that, heals disease in the body and so on, mental, emotional, and physical disease. There are various different protocols that work with all manner of physical ailments, and it's very effective. And I'm not sure how much that answers your question, but the reason that I'm so passionate about it is because for me, it goes right to the core of like the deepest issue. Which is the feeling of alienation from source.
Yeah, it makes total sense to me. And because everything's always connected to, so if we can go back to that level, that's where everything really starts, right? Yeah. Where we, when we, like first experience the initial experience of separation, then everything follows from there. So it makes total sense if you can work on that level, that it will affect everything else.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's beautiful. And what I found really fascinating was what you said about like it being a light language or like light healing frequency more than an energy healing modality. Would you like to expand a little bit more on that, maybe for some of the people who are listening who might not exactly understand what that means? And also for myself, I'd really love to hear more about that.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you from two different levels. The first thing is that if you look, I'm two biggest polarities. Are you still there, Anna? I just froze for a second.
I lost you for a second too.
We broke Zoom with our with our energy.
I guess, yeah.
So I was just saying, if you look metaphysically at how the cosmos is structured, the two biggest polarities are light and frequency. So essentially, it goes right to the heart of the phenomenon of separation and deals with that instead of the side effect, which is energy. So energy comes as like a secondary component, if that makes any sense at all. It deals with the big polarities of separation. And the difference between light and frequency and energy is that energy is on a much more physiological level, as well as being cosmic as well, whereas light and frequency is kind of the underpinning that's beneath that, if that makes any sense at all. So it's like a deeper layer. Does that make any sense?
Intuitively it makes total sense, because I think I've experienced similar things. I'd probably have to meditate on it a little more, but I work with a healing modality called Atlantean healing, and I often find when I work with this modality, it's not like a regular energy healing modality. It really works on the soul level, on the spiritual level, and I can really feel the difference. Like it's a lot more subtle in a way and more gentle, and I can just feel the difference. So I don't know if it's exactly the same, probably not exactly the same, but I can definitely see those different levels. And so
it's interesting that you mentioned that, Anna, because I know that the Atlanteans were masters of light healing, so I'm sure there's a correlation there.
Oh yeah, that makes sense then, because it is a healing modality that the priests and priestesses of Atlantis practiced.
Awesome.
So yeah, it makes perfect sense then.
Absolutely, it does. Exciting.
Yeah. Would you like to share a little more about creating from the heart? Because I also feel that's so important as we go through this shift and consciousness. And I've done quite a bit of work on this as well in the past 6, 7, or 8 years. And why is this so important? And where do you see the potential for us as we learn to live more in our hearts as we move forward on our journey of evolution here on this planet?
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure all the light workers on the planet have been going through this over the last 6 or 7 years. Like, there's definitely a connection in how we've been doing that. Because the one of the major things that happened in the cosmos over the last decade, in fact, more than a decade ago, was there was a pole shift in 2007. Do you know anything about this?
Yeah, I've definitely heard people talking about it.
Okay.
And I just had an interesting dream today as well, or last night, that anyway, I'm not going to interrupt you. I'm just going to let you continue. Maybe you can go into that a little
I'd
bit
love
later.
to hear about your dream later. Well, one of the things that the pole shift did was it changed the nature of how life functioned. And it used to be the case that you could create through thought alone. And that is no longer the case. You now actually need to use the power of the heart to create. We have to have it now. And this was to stop us from being able to haphazardly create horrible experiences through our thoughts accidentally. You have to use the power of the heart now to be creative at all. Otherwise, it seems like just not a whole lot actually happens in your life. So you touched on this earlier where you were saying about, passion and joy is that and it has some kind of magical, maybe doesn't need results. We have to have our heart power available to us now to have true creative power in physical life. And so many people are talking about this from various different angles at the moment, and it just can't be bypassed, really.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear perspective, and there are so many different perspectives on this too.
Yeah.
One thing that I found is that when I create from the mind, or from just, I guess the mind is more than just our thoughts, right? But like, it just gets so painful, because then we're really in the dream of separation. Like, everything's like a fragmented reality, and it just gets so complicated and painful. Whenever I come back into my heart, then that's where we have unity, and where we really, it's not just understanding the truth of how we create, but actually really living it. It's in the heart, really. We have the perfect balance. Everything comes together, the masculine and the feminine.
How you put that.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense, of course, that as way showers, we have to be doing that to create a new world where unity is the norm.
Yeah, and I almost feel like there's no other choice. Like, I always find when I get out of my heart space and I go back into the old and the old ways of doing things, it just gets so painful so quickly, and I burn out. Like, I literally burn out like so quickly, and it can be frustrating at times, but also just beautiful when you come back into that space and you actually see that it works, and it works way better. And it just sometimes so easy to get caught up in those stories, those old stories that we've been told, or things that we learned as children. You gotta do things in a certain way, or you gotta struggle to survive, or things like that. It just doesn't work that way anymore. And
it's like a dance of constant remembering the new way, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a really fascinating topic, and I'm so excited we had to talk about this today. One thing that I remember, I studied with Drunvalo Melchizedek back in 2012, and he talked about this a lot. And one thing that he mentioned was that, like, living in the heart, or returning to the heart, can be really painful when you have a lot of emotional trauma. So you probably know a lot about this, and I wanted to ask you if you have anything that you would like to share about this spontaneously, and also if you have any modalities, I guess the one that you already mentioned, Belvaspaton, maybe other tips that you could share as well to make this process a bit easier and less painful.
Absolutely. So there was another reason why light and frequency as a modality, and I won't even go into the modality just yet, but why working with light and frequency versus energy is so useful. Just to go a tiny bit into the metaphysics again, I won't go so deep that we break Zoom, but frequency is emotion, essentially, and light is perception, which basically means clear seeing. So, we cannot avoid the dealing with the emotional pain. I've had a lot of emotional trauma, so I know this one all too well. We can't avoid dealing with it. You know that as well. You cannot possibly create the life you want if you don't deal with the emotional trauma. So we do have to go there. But if you can go there applying perception at the same time as dealing with the emotions, it allows you to see the truth in the matter at the same time as processing the emotional pain. So like a really basic example would be, okay, you have to go and deal with what's in the heart. But if you can see the perfection that's in the experiences at the same time as doing that, it makes it so much more graceful. And it makes it, you can just walk through it so much more easily than being totally taken out by things. So trying to find a balance of the light and the frequency, the perception and the emotion, is a really good trick, I find, to enable you to deal with that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's really, when you look at it from this perspective, like one thing I always like to say is basically healing happens when you look at something without judging it, or when you observe something without judging it. But I also feel it really helps to just release that resistance, which is really what causes the pain.
Absolutely. That's brilliantly described. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yay. This is so exciting. Yeah, so I think I don't have any more questions for you on my list for the rest of our conversation, but is there anything else that you wanted to share with our audience, like anything that spontaneously is wanting to come through or that you wanted to share?
Yeah. So I would love to say, I feel like I have my finger on the cosmic pulse all of the time, and I hardly say half of what I actually sense. However, what I do know is that we have recently received major cosmic upgrades where, like never before, lightworkers are supported in every possible way to be able to let go of the emotional baggage, to be able to get clear on their true purpose, to be able to go in the direction that they're really supposed to be going in. We just have to allow ourselves to lean into that and know that it's our time. Because I find, and I'm sure you recognize this as well, Anna, in some way at least, it's been tough for us as light workers. It's been kind of a tough journey. We have a tendency, at least I find a lot of my clients, and I've had this as well, have a tendency to kind of maintain this identity of, the warrior, it's been a hard slog, and so on and so forth. If we can know that we're totally supported to release that now and to begin to be able to receive for the efforts that we've put in, everything is there to have that experience at the moment. We just have to trust in it and to jump.
Yeah, it totally resonates. It's exactly what I've been experiencing too, especially in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I'd say. Like, it's just been crazy. But I feel like...
it's been nuts, hasn't it?
I think I just lost you for a moment. I hope, let's see. Yeah, the connection's a little slow, but I'll just edit out whatever needs to be. So, but what I wanted to say is that I've definitely been feeling, especially in the last 4 weeks, maybe just like there's so much that I just can't do in the same ways anymore. But I for a long time, actually, I kind of still tried to hold on to certain ways of doing things. And like this year in total has been a total year of redoing everything and coming back to my authenticity and everything. But I think in the last 4 weeks or so, I just felt that support, like to help let go of certain things that, like, I'm just being shown it's not working anymore. Like I try and then it just doesn't work. And but at the same time, I'm getting so much inspiration and guidance that's really showing me how to do it differently. So that's also been really helpful.
That's awesome. I love how tapped in you are to the magic. That is so cool.
Yeah, well, definitely feeling it, but I tend to resist it a lot, actually. I tend to do everything the hard way and just try out everything until I see, well, it really doesn't work. So this is all, now I'm going to do it the easy way.
You just have to prove it to yourself first. Give the rational mind something to chew on.
Exactly. But yeah, that resonates so deeply. Yeah, so the last thing that I wanted to ask you is how our people, our audience, or whoever's
Mhm.
listening or watching the video can get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more
Mm,
about you and your work, or if they're interested in working with you. Do you have a
yeah.
website or whatever other ways there are to get in
Mhm.
touch with you? Mm.
So I'm in lots of different places, but the easiest places to find me would be on Facebook or on my website. And I have on Facebook my business page, which is, you can find me under my name, Ciara Young, and also the Blazing Heart Foundation, which is the name of my business. My website is theblazingheartfoundation.com, and I also have a Facebook group called the Luminous Being Evolutionary Portal. So those would be
Mm.
the easiest places to find more information.
Awesome. Yeah, and you have a lot of really beautiful content in all of those places.
Oh,
Yeah, I
thank
love your
you.
Facebook group, by the way. I'm not very
Thank you.
active in there, but I sometimes read your posts and really love what you share.
Oh,
And you have a
thank you.
really beautiful blog too.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
yeah, everyone definitely go check her out. And um, that's pretty much it for today. So thank you so much, Ciara,
Oh, thank
for
you.
being here with me today. It was so much fun talking to you and
Oh,
exchanging some magic and ideas and inspiration. And
likewise. Thank you so much. It's been lovely, Anna.
yeah, and thank you so much, everybody, for listening or for watching the video. And I look forward to being back with my next episode very soon.